2020. And our first order of business is to approve the minutes from June 1st of 2021. I'll call on our Vice Chairman, Trey Gooch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've read those minutes and find everything to be in order. My motion is to approve.
Sir.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries. Next is the investment report. We'll call on Ms. Nolan. Oh, I'm sorry, Ted.
That's okay.
Skipping ahead here.
I'll move quickly. I get the message.
There you go.
We didn't have any bids this month, and so our effective rate was 27 basis points. So the LGIP rate, you can see, is down to 1 basis point. I'll answer any questions, but I'll be quick.
Motion to approve the report.
Have a motion, Mr. Gooch, and second, Mr. Johnson. Any other questions? Not, call roll, please.
Yes. Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Motion carries.
Chairman, before he leaves, I've got a quick question for you. A lot of this property is selling now for a whole lot more than it did 4 or 5 years ago. Just say I had 5 acres and it was on the sale record of maybe $50,000. Today I sold it for $250,000. Does that affect, and how long does it take to affect, if it does, the amount of tax you get off that property?
That, and the assessors here, that would adjust in the reappraisal year. So all of those arm length sales, when we say that, a true sale, not between parents and children, those type things, would all go into the data. And so every 4 years, we have a reappraisal. And so that would impact. So next year, 2022, those will start coming out, I guess, in May or so, or March of next year, the reappraisal notices, but there will be a reappraisal, so those values will be adjusted based on comparable sales. Not just the sale of the property, I think I'm right here, not just the sale of that individual property, but the comps that go with that property to adjust those values, and that will occur next year, and that's on a 4-year cycle currently.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. While we're on that subject, Mr. Mitchell is here, but he sent me I think it was a text or an email earlier today where Memphis has voted to go to a 2-year cycle, waiting approval of the General Assembly, I believe. So it's something that over the course of the next year, because things are changing so rapidly here, it's something that this body could take a look at. Instead of waiting a 4-year cycle, you go 2-year cycle. Just FYI.
Okay. Ted's not ready to leave quite yet. I think you've got our next thing up, our recommendation for county banking services.
Yes, sir. Thank you. In your SharePoint, we gave you a summary. We bid typically about every 4 years the county banking services, and so it was time for us to rebid those banking services. We had 3 proposals that were submitted. One was from Truist Bank, which is SunTrust BB&T, now known as Truist, Pinnacle Bank, and First Bank. And we've given you the summary, but as you look with the assumptions that we made, because they did bid just a little bit differently, out of those 3, First Bank gave us what netted out to be the highest return over the next 3 years. And we did it 3 because, as you know, interest rates are historically low and liquidity is historically high for banks with all of the the federal money and the banks collateralizing and having money. So our contract, if y'all will approve this, would be 3 years with possibility of 2 one-year extensions. But our feeling is we probably won't go 4 years on the next contract, but we'll go 3 years thinking the environment may be better 3 years from now. So based on those 3 years, the First Bank proposal provided the highest return, and they are our incumbent bank, and there is a significant cost to change institutions. So our recommendation is to accept their proposal and continue our contract with First Bank.
Okay, you've heard the recommendation. Do I hear a motion or more questions?
I could make the motion, but I'm just wondering if I've got any kind of a conflict because I've got 5 shares in the First Bank. No, I'm just, of course, I would have to vote Rule 10 on all of it all the way around.
Yeah,
That'd be safe, yes. And still vote.
Motion to accept First Bank.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to accept First Bank in our new contract. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call roll.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Rule 10,
Are you voting yes or no, Rule 10? Okay, yes. Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Mady.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
All right, now we'll get to the fund condition report.
Okay, we'll start with the development tax. In May, we received $357,750, bringing our year-to-date to $5,658,375. Our cash balances at the end of May totaled $397,044,000, with $341 million, around $95,000 being operating funds, $55,950,000 being borrowed funds. When you look at the cash balance in the general fund, it looks really high. Just remind you that we've got our emergency rental program is running through the general fund. So those, and the feds advance those monies to us. So they're sitting in there, but it's restricted to use. There's no other questions on that. I'll just move to the revenue review.
Lisa, on line item 171 on the Goldstein building, that figure that you've got there, would you explain?
$25,000, that was money set aside for
The engineering
the
review.
engineering.
And that was funded from a moving money from the Gov 20 account.
Would that come through property management the other day?
Yeah, that's the property
did.
management also.
Yeah.
It happened last month. Yeah.
Okay. I knew there was something going on there, and I'm not on that committee, so I missed those notes. Thank you.
Okay, so on the review of revenue, we've gone through all the revenue adjustments in a prior meeting. The numbers here are reflective before those adjustments. So what I was trying to show you, all those, you can see how now, let me get to that revenue review. All those in yellow that we have already met or exceeded our estimate for those grouping of revenues. So, and in the general fund, if you just looked at the bottom line, we'd already hit 100% in total, but of course, you know, we're adjusting that, and that's why we had those adjustments along the way. Interesting to note to me was the amount of property tax collected as of the end of May. 98.4% of the roll was collected. It's a 0.5% more than what we did last year. I already spoke about the development tax. Hotel motel tax at the end of May compared to actual amounts received last year was a decrease of 12.29%. That's surprising to me. Now, I'll tell you why that is not as bad as it was. I mean, if you think about most of the year that we were closed, we reduced our estimate. So we met our budgeted estimate, but within the last year, the county clerk, I'm reminding you, the county clerk did the audit, so these numbers are also reflective of those numbers coming in based on the audits. So that's why it's not as bad as it could have been. And the other part, I was talking to, I guess, Doug this afternoon, and thinking about where we were at this point in the world in May of last year and making our estimates for revenue in sales tax and thinking, what in the world's going to happen? So we reduced our amount, our estimate from what we received last year, and then received a 16%. I mean, right now, overall, we've got a 16% increase in sales tax for all the municipalities and the county. I wouldn't have believed you if you told me that was going to happen last year at this time. So that's my report, sir.
Okay, you've heard the report. Any questions for our finance director?
Motion to approve the report.
Motion to approve. And a second. Any further discussion? Call roll, please.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. All right, next up is the risk management financial report. Ed? Welcome.
Chairman, good evening. So in your 264 fund tracker, if you look at the total enrollment, you'll see 6,330. And for the month of May, the calendar year, you'll see for the revenue, $9,069,650 compared to expenditures, $6,351,783 for a difference revenue on the positive side, $2,717,867. Year to date on the calendar year, there's $41,386,529 in revenue compared to expenditures $33,570,315. And then if you look at the fiscal year, you will see for revenue with 1 month left, the revenue is $76,718,115 compared to the expenditures $77,352,647 with a difference of negative $637,533. Oh, $634,533. On the Fund 266, for the month of May, workers' comp, $4,042.15. OJI, $27,254.36. And the total for the month of May, $31,296.51. Year to date, your workers' comp is $130,647.51. OJI year to date, $476,983.10. Your total for the year on your workers' comp, or OJI, is $607,630.61. Moving to the legal expense. Legal expense for the month of May was $26,166.87. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Heard the report. Are there any questions for Ed? If not, we'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve?
Have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Dodd? Yes. Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Okay, motion carries. And you've got the next one, Risk Management Committee recommendations for property and casualty insurance.
Yes, sir. And just so the committee, just a little bit of a reminder, last month we were coming to the property and casualty. APIP pulled out their quote, so we have had to scramble around and find somebody else to replace them. And we have we've even all the way up to today, we've had some changes coming in. So if the committee doesn't mind, Mr. Chairman, if David Patterson can come up and just kind of go through this and the additional changes, I would appreciate it.
I don't see any objection. You can come forward. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So last time we met, there were a couple still moving parts and pieces to the program, the property being one and the cyber liability being the other. We have firmed those two things up. On your illustration, APIP pulled out of the state of Tennessee. They didn't just drop us. They pulled out of the whole state. So went to Travelers and Liberty Mutual, and Liberty Running Away is a much better program, and we just got that firmed up actually today. On your illustration, the stuff that I've highlighted in the Liberty Mutual column, which is the third column over, those are all the coverages that are better. So if it's highlighted, it's better. You'll notice that there are a couple of things where the numbers are red. I got that fixed today. I just got the email literally as I was walking in the building. So Liberty Mutual agreed to a $2.5 million for electronic data processing computer equipment and a $25 million earthquake limit. So with those two changes, I mean, Liberty Mutual is way better than Travelers. You can kind of look through that and see. I mean, I can go line by line if y'all want me to, or if you have any questions, but the premium is less and the coverage is better, and that's kind of a recipe for a win.
Mr. Chairman.
Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, it'd be my recommendation, David, that we delete the terrorism coverage.
Correct.
Okay.
So what the mayor's referring to is TRIA, or the terrorism coverage that was instituted back in 9/11. Since that time, with all of the stuff that's happened in this country, the federal government has never certified an act of terrorism. So it kind of doesn't make sense to pay premium for terrorism coverage when they're not going to certify an act of terrorism. And those are the numbers that at the very bottom of the second page, the 5,000 and the 11,370, those numbers are not included in that total. That's why I kind of put them in red, just to let you guys know what the terrorism. So if for some reason there was a terrorist attack that was a certified terrorist attack in the state of Tennessee, in Murfreesboro, Rutherford County, it wouldn't be covered by the policy because we didn't buy terrorism coverage.
And the federal government has to certify that it is a terrorist attack.
The federal government has to certify it as an act of terrorism. They didn't certify the Boston bombing. They haven't ever certified another act of terrorism, because if they do that, they pay for it. So they're probably not going to do that.
And this is totally different than cyber.
Correct. This is a whole separate, yeah.
Are we covered for a ransom software attack? That wouldn't be related to any kind of terrorism?
Right. If you'll flip, so the next two slides are the casualty coverages, which is exactly the same as what we looked at the last meeting. And then the cyber is I guess the fifth page, which, to answer your question, is yes. Ransomware and all that stuff, ransomware attacks and all that is included in the cyber liability.
And payment in Bitcoin.
Payment in Bitcoin, or whatever cryptocurrency that the bad guys want. Yes. So the,
In the cyber, you might mention the coverage went half compared to last year.
so yeah, the program we had through the APIP was kind of a shared limits program, and we had a $2 million limit, and it was really competitive. You can see by the premium. In the last 12 to 16 months, definitely 18 months, cyber liability has gone off the rails because of all the ransomware. I mean, the Colonial Pipeline and the beef processing claim that just happened. Literally, the statistic is every hour there are 4 cyber claims. Every hour. So insurance companies are losing their minds, and they're pricing it. It was priced way, way too thin for all these years. The bad guys have figured out an easy way to make money off this stuff with the ransomware attack. I mean, that is what you need to worry about. So the premium is significantly more, and the limit is half. And that isn't the best quote I got. That was the only quote I could get. So, yeah, public entities are actually on the do not want list of most carriers. So the other pages are exactly what we looked at the last meeting. Dental professional, I think there's still consideration of adding a dentist, the self-insured bond, and then the fee. So that's it. I think Liberty's the way to go.
Mr. Chairman, this just kind of sparked a thought or a question on the cyber attack. Who would make a decision that we would pay the ransom or not? Or do we even have any kind of a policy on that?
Mr. Chairman, I don't believe that we have a policy on who would pay. I'm sure that once IT were to identify that we had been attacked and we get a note saying pay us, $5 million in Bitcoin, I'm sure Cody would be waiting at my door, and then I would reach out to our insurance broker, and then I think that it would probably, without being my decision, I would like to consult with Chairman of Finance, and probably if he wants to call together the committee, that would be appropriate, I think. What's our deductible on cyber?
$100,000. So it would
And
be
is
a
a
joint-
policy for $1 million?
It's $1 million. So there'd be a joint decision between the county and the insurer, and the insurer's not going to withhold. I mean, they have a contractual liability to pay.
Well, hopefully they'll look and see how much we got and keep it at that.
Right, yeah, they try to keep it down.
We still get hit with 100,000, so we're
Right, you guys definitely have skin in the game.
our retention.
Yep.
Okay, any further questions? Mr. Johnson?
Mr. Pete, are you on the insurance committee?
No, sir.
Okay.
Chairman Allen is.
Rhonda, what was the temperature of the insurance committee on their recommendation?
I was actually absent from that meeting, but this is very much in line with, I think, what we expected to hear that day.
We approved to move forward with the traveler's quote. The day that he walked in, he was still awaiting on the Liberty Mutual quote, and so now he's received it, and it's less premium with higher coverages.
The insurance committee never saw the Liberty quote because it wasn't in. You've got $1.5 billion, so they didn't give us a quote because it really was trying to put all that together at one time. I think now that after we've had an extra week to look at that, or 2 weeks actually, to look at this, and even today, if you'll see, there's a couple of numbers that have changed. So the recommendation was to go with Travelers, but we didn't have the Liberty quote.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve this coverage.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the recommendation of Finance Committee, or the Risk Management Committee.
All right, do I hear a second?
Second.
And
Just for
Sorry,
clarification.
I said committee, I meant director.
Oh, okay.
Director was the word I meant to use. Thank you.
And same thing with the second. Okay. All right. Any further discussion or questions on this? Sounds like we could stand to have a few more leave the state if we get double or the coverage and less cost. So, hearing no more questions, call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. All right. Risk Management Committee recommendations for retiree vision and dental insurance. Ed?
Okay, so at the last commission meeting, if I'm not mistaken, Commissioner Gammon asked that, I was in the audience and said he would like to take a look at the dental and vision for retirees. So we went back, got with Cigna, got with Mercer, looked at the dental and vision for retirees, the cost, what type of an effect it would have on the existing active members that we have. Once we took a look at it, we looked at that it would not have an adverse effect, and actually, based on the information that we have at this point, we feel like that there would not be a rate increase for dental and vision by adding the retirees to the plan.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Did you say there would not be?
There would not be, for 2022, there would not be a rate increase by adding the retirees to the plan for...
They have to pay.
And yes, this is thank you. This is a fully funded plan by the employees. This is the county does not fund this plan in any manner. It's the entire cost is funded by the employees' premiums, and the retirees would be also in this.
Okay, well, it sounds like a good thing, at least making that opportunity available. Any further questions on this? And I'll state now, I'll be declaring Rule 10 on this particular issue.
I'm trying to stay out of jail. As a retiree, do I need to vote Rule 10 on this? Trust me, I'm just trying to stay out of jail.
The way I understand it, you may vote, after stating Rule 10, you can still vote, but,
Better safe than sorry.
sir. Any other questions? Do I have a motion on this?
No, sir.
Not, okay.
I guess I can make a motion to approve then.
Have a motion?
Second.
And a second to approve retirees paying for their own vision and dental insurance. Let's state it exactly the way it is. Any further questions? Hearing none, call roll.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Rule 10 and yes.
All right. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Ed. All right, next up is our ambulance service fund budget transfer and amendments. I see Melanie on her way up. Welcome.
Good evening. We have a total of 4. Do you want me to do all of them at once or vote on them one at a time?
Let's plan on doing all of them unless I hear an objection or someone wants to split one of these off. We'll just start and keep going.
Okay, the first one, we're requesting to transfer $15,000 from our paraprofessionals payroll into our part-time payroll. Next, we received $24,295 from GovDeals for the sale of old vehicles, and we're requesting to appropriate those funds into our health equipment line item, which is $735. We're also requesting to transfer $117,000 from our motor vehicles, $718, into our health equipment, $735. Next, we're requesting to transfer $150,000 from our fund balance into the judgments line item. This is to provide additional funds for liability and property claims to be paid for the self-insurance fund, and that is for future claims and to cover any reserves at year end. And the last one came after public safety, but we have spoken with Chairman Reed, and he has approved these. These are to transfer the grant funds for our forensic department. We're requesting to transfer $6,479 from the travel and $3,578 from the drugs and medical supplies, both of those to go into the health equipment, 735.
Okay, you've heard her request. Are there any questions? I see Chairman Reed back there. If y'all got any questions for him, you can certainly ask him. Hearing none, we'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Mr. Johnson makes a motion.
Second.
Second from Vice Chair Gooch. Any further questions for Melanie? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch? Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is a reclassification for the sheriff's office position. Welcome, Preble.
I need your approval to reclassify. You'll like it, it's cheaper. Reclassify position number 1426, which currently is an admin 3. I know it says supervisor 3 on there, but it's an admin 3. That is a grade 19. I want it reclassified to a deputy clerk, which is a grade 16. And that's the people you see in the front lobby that are in the front lobby.
Okay, are there any questions for Preble or basically?
Is that just one position?
One position.
Okay, motion to approve.
I have a motion
Second.
and second. Any further questions for Preble? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. All right, next up is a application for U.S. Office of Justice Programs Grant for Recovery Court. That Trish coming up, I think.
Chairman, we actually have 3 items on the agenda. Would you like for us to handle them individually or do the 2 requests and then the amendment?
Let's do the 2 requests, then we'll do the amendments.
Commissioners, with me today is Lindsay Davis. She's the supervisor of our reentry services at our recovery court office, and she would like to request permission to apply for 2 no county match grants. Both of these grants would be to assist the reentry program within 940 and within the workhouse. And this did go through public safety with no opposition.
Any questions?
How much are the grants for?
There's one that's a federal grant, and that one is $900,000 for 36 months. And the other one is a state grant, which is $50,000 for 1 year.
Motion to approve the request to apply for the grants.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions on these grants? This is giving you permission to apply, and we'll see these again, so.
Yeah, these are no match grants, so typically we will allow the mayor to sign those because they're not involving any additional funds. So we would write the resolution as such
Well, let's add that to our motion if that's okay.
Yes.
And with the second also, is that okay? All right. Well, we're good on that then. Any other discussion? Hearing none, call roll, Mark. And that's on these two.
Yeah. Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Okay, next is the third one is an amendment to the state grants for Veterans Court and Mental Health Court.
Some months back, the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services contacted me, and they had some budget overage. They asked if Rutherford County's recovery courts would be interested in accepting some additional grant dollars. Again, it's at no cost to the county. Two of them were listed on the SharePoint, but one of them was, I think, left off. So for Veterans Treatment Court, it was $14,394. For Mental Health Court, it was $28,659. And for Recovery Court or Drug Court was $24,247 for a total from the state of $67,300. And it would just be asking permission for us to accept that.
And these are no match, just in addition to what we'd already approved.
No match, and a lot of it will go back and be able to reimburse the county for funding that we have spent from our county budget, because it can go back all the way up to July 1st of last year.
Judge, did we get the recovery court grant? Because I did not get a copy of it, so.
Yes, all
Okay.
of it has, all the amendments have been through the state budget,
Okay.
and
So-
all of the forms have been signed by the mayor
Okay.
and
If you could
submitted.
forward me a copy of that recovery court grant for our records.
Okay, you've heard the request.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further questions?
You said that there was a department with the state that had extra money? Is that with a,
I'm not certain how they had it. I didn't ask
Okay.
questions. I just said, yes, we would love to have
okay, that's
it.
good.
I didn't ask questions.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Thank y'all. All right, next up is our state litter contract for Correctional Work Center, and I think Superintendent Cope's on his way up to explain that to us. Welcome, Bill.
Evening. In front of you, I'll be requesting approval for our 2021-2022 contract with the Department of Transportation for litter removal of the state routes. This is the one that we do every year that reimburses for our state routes and our interstates. It's already been looked over by our attorney and with our board and gone in front of public safety.
Any questions for Mr. Cope? I have one, and I probably should have asked this at public safety, is the amount of trash we're picking up is just really increasing. Is the state looking at maybe giving us some more money for the amount that we're having to go through, or are we?
Well, it's paid in cycles. So it's 6 cycles a year, which we end up doubling and sometimes tripling that anyway. But they haven't talked about any raises in that. And it's $100 a mile for interstates and then $75 for state routes. But there's been no talk of raising it. They raised it, I think, 2 years ago. But none of recent talks about it.
Any other questions for Superintendent Cope?
I have one. If you did not pick the trash up on the interstates, who would?
Well, they've contracted with state employees in the past. They've contracted with the Boy Scouts. So they just go back to probably contracting with their own employees, just like they do in other counties. So, but ultimately, I think that's holding inmates to hard labor is kind of our responsibility, so we're going to do it one way or another. We're just being reimbursed for it.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussions? And we still need a motion on this, don't we, Mark?
Yes, sir.
Entertain one now. Someone like to address that?
Motion to approve.
Mr. Pearson?
Second.
Mr. Gooch, thank you. Any other questions?
I have one more comment. Do you feel like doing the interstates leaves you ample time to do the interstate roads in our county?
Well, we have different employees who are on different cycles. So whenever I think we went in front, I think it was last year that we asked for one new employee, and that was to designate to that job. So the biggest deterrent in getting roads clean is not having the employees or the inmates to do it. It's the amount of garbage. Weekly, I send that report to the deputy mayor, and when you're picking up 2,000 pounds of garbage off of roads in a week, that's a lot of garbage. 90 bags off of the interstate over just a matter of 8 miles is a lot of garbage. So it's not taking away any, it's just taking more time because of the garbage that's out there.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Not, call roll, please.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, next is a MOU with Williamson County for juvenile detention. Welcome.
So in front of you tonight, you have a MOU with Rutherford County and Williamson County. This is a little different than what you've seen in the past. This is not just Williamson County wanting to be able to place young people in our facility. It goes both ways, and this is when we have a natural disaster or man-made disaster. If we have something come up like COVID and we have some staffing issues, where we can have a professionally run facility that we can utilize in the event that we're not able to keep young people at our facility. So Williamson County has agreed to do this, and vice versa, and the county attorney has looked at it. We've been working on this for some time, and I'll happily answer any questions. The daily fee is $175 per day per child for them as well as for us.
We looked at this in public safety, and it passed with a favorable motion all the way across.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Commissioner Gooch?
I'm just curious, have we had to send any overflow, or you're saying that if we would have to send them over, it could be because of lack of employees or staffing?
As an example, there was about a 2-week period during the height of our pandemic when all of my female employees were either quarantined or had tested positive for COVID, and luckily at the time we did not have any female detainees. Had we had a female detainee, I was the only certified officer that could have worked 24-hour shift. So we were able to get by in that situation, but in the event something like that would come up, it would be a good thing to be able to have some place for that young person to be detained temporarily until we can kind of get back up
But
to
we've never
speed.
had an opportunity where we needed to see.
We haven't. Williamson County has actually asked in the past to send some of their kids to us. Their facility is not quite as big as ours. And they had some co-defendants that they wanted to keep separated. We didn't have anything in place at the time, so we didn't agree to it. This would allow for that, for them or for us if we wanted to, but we're larger and are able to keep kids separated where they can't.
You could have racked up some overtime on the.
No, thank you. We all worked every day, so that was enough.
Okay, any other questions? Hearing none, call roll.
Commissioner Dodd? Yes. Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson? Yes. Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Peak?
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next is the utilization of the Motorola equipment credit. Mayor, are you going to do this one?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to ask Director Clark to come up and help me, but I'll go ahead and get started. But when we met with Motorola, they came to us and told us that there had been, and when we first went to the bond market on the 16 million plus Motorola program, moving from analog to digital countywide for all first responders, they said that it was overestimated on the numbers that we needed, plus the Sheriff's Department, I believe, the radios were already being installed by Enterprise before they came in. So I think all of those new vehicles that we're leasing from Enterprise are already coming equipped with the Motorola. So that generated a credit of $439,883.60. And you have before you on your share pad option 2 and option 3 of how we want to apply that credit. And then also we'll enter into the discussion with the city of Murfreesboro with Bill Terry on utilization of us not hiring, them hiring a full-time Motorola person who will be dedicated to working on our systems. Now, I believe you just lost Peter. He went to take over the state program with Highway Patrol. And this Motorola will hire somebody, they'll pay for the benefits, everything else, right? And I'll let you explain it from here.
So this field service operator through Motorola basically would maintain the cores, servers, wires, all those complicated, complex parts of our system and maintain that. And this is also done in Nashville, Williamson County, other places, and it secures our system. They make sure that all is up and working. In the event that there was some reason, a failure, this person would act. He has all the training, complex computer training, all those kind of things in place, and then make sure that we have proper updates and make sure that we're up and running properly every day. It's vital to our system. It's a complex system, so that we are able to communicate without a hitch.
This passed out of public safety.
Yes, sir. During that, we had talked to Murfreesboro City concerning this matter as well. And one of the things that came up was it was their intent to make this a 10-year contract with Motorola so that our system is still robust and making sure that it's hard to find somebody just for 2 years. And they would make sure that the city was pushing for that 10 years. With this amount of credit, it is our recommendation to pay for, out of that credit, the first 2 years. And it's our hopes that it would start January 1, 2022, and it would go to 2024, that 2 years that from this credit. The rest of those years, the remaining 8 years, would be $77,200, correct, $77,200 each year till we march out 10 years.
Is this the same system that we give, what, 16 million for?
That is correct, sir.
Is what you're discussing here tonight not covered in the $4.5 million we paid for the service contract for it?
So there is a discount on that. However, yes, we still would maintain a service contract of $400,000, somewhere around in there, a year after we flip the switch and after that first year. We haven't flipped that switch yet as far as making that 1-year warranty.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Piercy, part of this is, in that agreement, they had someone to help us, but they were not here. For instance, they could have been coming from Nashville or Franklin, and something happened on the interstate, take them 2 or 3 hours to get here. This puts a person, boots on the ground in this county. Now, I don't know if we've decided whether they would be in our facility or Murfreesboro City's facility. Has that been decided? Mayor, I don't know.
I don't think there's been any finalization on that, probably because Murfreesboro is a primary PSAP. Is that correct?
Murfreesboro, if you best remember, is the primary, and we run the geo redundants. We have the backup part of this system. To be honest with you, whether it's the backup, it's all one big system. And so whenever they do repairs, it goes to ours as well. We have different talk groups on our side than we do Murfreesboro City, but we also have channels that communicate back and forth. So we have good, compatibility, so we can communicate with each other if we needed to.
And I believe we made the decision last year when we went with the Motorola program to go with the so-called Murfreesboro network as opposed to TACAN. Am I correct? Mr. Johnson, I think I'm correct. We went with the Murfreesboro system.
Mr. Chairman. This is just basically a stopgap measure to make sure that everything's going to be in working order and be taken care of in the event of any emergency, et cetera, right?
Yes, sir. We'll have a Motorola representative that knows everything about this system, and he will basically be employed with Murfreesboro and Rutherford County and work here 40 hours a week, subject to up to 4 hours overtime that Motorola, I think, is in your contract, that would pay that individual. We would pay Motorola, and so would Murfreesboro, and then Motorola will pay that employee. We owe them no benefits. It's a flat fee of $77,200 each year. First 2 years, that money would come out of this credit.
Mr. Chairman, did this come out of public safety okay, didn't it?
Public safety did give the nod agreement on that. I don't think there were any dissents on it. Chairman Reed's here. He could probably answer that for me.
And did we go with option 2 or option 3?
2.
2. That's what I was thinking. We went with option 2, which includes all these other issues for the sheriff's Tahoes, spare batteries, the sheriff APX spare batteries, Genesis upgrade to the management system. All that would be included in this credit. So there's some hardware pieces in here that would be included. It's just not the $77,000 for the individual.
I move we approve the recommendation from public safety.
Yes, it was approved from public safety.
Option 2.
Option 2.
Option 2.
Is Joe Gurley on public safety?
Yes,
He approved, it was unanimous as far as you recall?
It was.
it was. Full 7 voted in favor of it. It was unanimous. We met, and I met with Chris and the mayor, Motorola's representative, also Chairman Reed, and discussed it too. You know, that to me it looked like one of the better options on how to utilize that money that we had from this, especially with us not having a radio specialist right now. We've got Mr. Johnson is, not this Mr. Johnson, but another Mr. Johnson is filling in for us right now, where Peter is gone. So this is a good thing, having a person on the ground that can help us, especially at this time. Any further questions for Chris or the mayor, or we can suspend the rules or have Mr. Reed come up if y'all like.
Do we know what the disposition of the $2,779 is? Are they going to write us a check back for that amount, or have they said
That
anything?
would be I believe in that,
That go against our
2,000, I think there was $2,000, is that correct?
$2779.48 according to this.
And that would be continued to be a credit.
Okay. So I'm assuming we would apply that against the maintenance contract in the future some point?
Good.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, you've heard the recommendations from Public Safety and Public Safety Director Clark. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Johnson makes a motion to approve.
That option 2?
Or option 2.
Second.
And a second, Commissioner Allen. Any other questions for the mayor or Mr. Clark? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Clark. All right, next up is a contract amendment with Pictometry International and a related general fund budget amendment. And I'm not sure who's going to do this.
Rob is here, Mr.
Rob,
Mitchell.
or, okay.
Yeah.
Welcome, Mr. Mitchell.
I apologize, I do not have the budget transfer information in front of me to officially read, but I'll be here to answer any questions if you want to read it.
I'll read the one is the contract. It was an amendment.
Your mic on?
Okay, the first thing is the amendment to the agreement dated July 31st between Pictometry and Rutherford County. It is a, the cost of it is split over 2 years. With this contract, we did have a contract that was over 6 years. This is this next amendment to this one. They require, under this contract, half of the payment at shipment of imagery. Previously, we paid these invoices in July. This is a new contract with a different requirement, and it's now been shipped. So that is what is requiring us to go ahead and make 2 payments in 1 year because of this amendment to the contract. So the request is to approve the amendment and the budget amendment of $148,382. Now, we're placing this in the assessor's budget. This previous 6 years, the Pictometry was in GIS. We've already got it into next year's budget for 21-22 for the second half. So this is the first half that we're having to address this year.
We have the money already accounted for in next year's budget for the second payment, but
we didn't for the first payment.
We didn't. Last year it wasn't in our budget, so we didn't know to request it.
So we got the data early into meet the contract requirements, we need to go ahead and pay this.
All right, we've already received the imagery. They shipped the hard drive last week, so we've got it, and we're using the imagery for, so.
Yep, and Mr. Mitchell, they usually fly around the last week of February, first week of March, before the trees bud out with leaves, because they can't fly without the leaves being foliaged out.
Right, they always fly with leaf off, so that gives the best images. This year, it was a challenging year for them because of the weather. We had a lot of snow, we had a lot of rain, the planes couldn't get off the ground, but they were able to fly our entire county. And we are getting a benefit from this flight that we never had before. They've given us free certified orthos, which normally GIS hires a separate flight to fly, and it usually runs around $50,000 to $55,000. So we do have that added benefit of having something provided to us at no charge, simply because of our long-standing relationship with the vendor. They like doing business with Rutherford County.
Good to have friends.
Mr. Chairman, so these dollars were anticipated for your program. There's no change in the program. It just simply came in a budget year you did not anticipate. Right. Is that correct? So these are the dollars we talked about when you motion to approve.
Thank you. Do I hear a second? And a second. Any further questions for Mr. Mitchell or Lisa or the mayor? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Pearson?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you very much. Y'all have a great evening.
All right. Next up is a general fund budget transfer for human resources, and I think Lisa's going to do this one for us.
Yes, sir. This is a request to move $2,000 from the data processing equipment to their travel line for their SHRM conference for 2000. There's an early bird special. She can get this paid by June 30th, and that is the request.
Okay, so you've got a budget amendment within their budget. Do I hear any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Mr. Johnson?
Second.
Mr. Goose, thank you. Any further questions? Call roll, please.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Pearson?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Item 18, general fund budget transfer for the Register of Deeds, and I think Lisa's going to carry this one too.
Yes, it's a small amendment of $500 moving from data processing equipment to data processing services.
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion.
Second.
A second. Any further discussion? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Pearson?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. All right, next is a solid waste fund budget transfer, and I saw Mr. Nolan, there he is. Welcome back.
Thank you, sir. I don't know which one you have first, lubricant?
3,500. 3,500 first.
Okay, the first budget amendment is to move some money from engineering into the lubricants line item, where we'll buy the engine oil and the hydraulic oil to fill the tanks that we purchased. It's $3,500.
Request we hear them together, please.
Second budget amendment is to move $10,000 from the asphalt line item into the repair of equipment to repair and paint roll-off containers.
You've heard the request within his line items. Well, there's three of us.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Mr. Piercy, Commissioner Dodd, thank you. Any further questions?
We're not rash. We heard this in Public Works, and so we've exhausted it.
Yeah, 3 out of 4 of us anyway, so. All right. Hearing no further questions, call roll, please.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. All right. Next is a contract with Energy Land and Infrastructures LLC for convenience centers. Mayor, I believe you're going to do this one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This is an agreement, it's a standard agreement. It's with Energy Land and Infrastructure LLC, and the agreement intends to secure the professional services for the survey, preliminary and final design, and the development of the bidding documents for 4 of our convenience centers. This will take it all the way up to the bidding process. So the 4 convenience centers, as it passed out of Public Works on Tuesday night, the 4 that we're securing these professional services for is Rockvale, Leanna, Weekly Lane, and Walter Hill.
In the last, there's A, B, and C. The last one is the estimated cost of the contract for all 4.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Commissioner.
Are we still looking at moving the Weekly Lane site to the new? This looks like it's off Weekly Lane, though, so we're...
It's actually G Street, I believe, is what Energy Land Services is looking at, right? Moving it to G Street, the intent is to get that traffic off of Weekly Lane, where it's currently located. Also, I have been in touch with Mr. Hercules, and they will, I think the estimated cost would be to move sewer off of G Street, which is behind our current site, to move the sewer up to that location. We sell that location. It has water but no sewer on it, so we run that. Smyrna would run that for $30,000. The sewer line, give us the at no cost easement right away across their property that they own and put in the sewer tap. And then we would move over to our location that we own beside of where our clerk's office is located, where the old officer country club used to be on that site, which backs up to G Street.
So is this just to improve the efficiency at the current one until we move over there? Because this map that I'm looking at looks like it's on Weekly Lane.
It is. That's my question that I had too. Why are we designing something that's going to be moved?
For $483,000 too.
We have a representative from...
If you don't mind, if it's okay with the committee, we'll hear from
Mr. Jay Bradley.
Jeff, please come up.
Just identify yourself for the record.
Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Jay Bradley with Energy Land and Infrastructure. The intent is for the new site. Mr. Christensen and I went back and forth last week. That may have the older, when we first started negotiations with the county, it did include the existing site. Since that time, negotiations with Smyrna, we decided to move the site. So the intent of the contract is for the new location, not the existing.
So then what's on here with the Weekly Lane thing is not correct then?
May not be correct. It may be an older.
Here it is,
Well, I want
Jay.
you to look at it and tell me if it's correct or not, because I don't want to spend $400,000 on something that we're moving.
That is the existing site, and so it will be comparable at the new site. We haven't updated this concept or the site or the cost estimate, but it will be comparable.
When you say the cost estimate hasn't been updated, do you expect that to be more?
I anticipate it being very comparable to this site. We have enough room to duplicate what we have here that we're showing as proposed on this site, so it will be comparable.
Okay.
I have a question.
Mr. Pearson.
Of course. One of these is in my district, and I'm all about it. But if we move on this now, to spend this money, and say 40 days from now, the expansion is denied, we make a trade with someone to take care of our trash and run our convenience centers, what will we do with these plans that this money's going to buy?
That would be negotiated, I think, with whoever we decide to do whatever we're going to do. I think maybe one or two have proposed in their RFP to run the convenience centers, but what I saw in one of the projects is way too expensive. I think like $7 million to take over our convenience centers. And that comes down to sitting down at the table. If they were awarded by or recommended by Public Works Committee and then the full commission, and then that would have to be deducted of what engineering services have already been performed, in my opinion.
We had already had an agreement in place, there was money in place to do the engineering. So we're not really, my gut feeling is we're not really looking to approve the engineering, since in my mind, we've already done that. Is that correct, Lisa? Approve him doing the engineering, because we've already got money in the budget to perform the services.
All we've done was put money in the budget. You've not approved the contract yet.
We hadn't agreed to a contract with this gentleman, is what you're saying. So we're looking for a...
That's what your first item is. 20A is the agreement.
Commissioner Dodd, we looked at this the other night, so...
It's valid, Steve, but my gut is that I'm willing for this to proceed, because my interpretation of the RFPs we got were that they would take over what we have, what we've designed, what we've created, and they would take over managing our facility. So I don't know that if we do happen to go with any of those groups, they're going to manage what Jay designs if we choose to build it. So I would be comfortable with this from that perspective.
Just so I'm clear, Lisa, you're saying we're looking for a contract, or are we looking for the contract to go ahead and construct, or just for the engineering?
It's the it's the contract for engineering, not construction. I guess my question would be, are you doing based on the bills coming in, will it be with the alternative or not? Alternative. What you base your bill on?
The alternative she's referring to is initially we were asked to design concrete for the entire sites for maintenance purpose, long-term maintenance. Once we developed the cost, it was fairly significant, so the mayor asked us to go back and give a heavy-duty asphalt price. So we can, I mean, if it's the wishes to use the heavy-duty asphalt, we'll just incorporate that instead of the concrete.
One, the concrete?
I'm sorry?
Is the alternative the concrete?
Yes.
That's
the
correct.
Original is concrete, and the second is
The second
asphalt.
is heavy-duty asphalt.
Yes.
Okay.
So we can just incorporate the heavy-duty asphalt.
It's the cheaper. You'll
Yes.
have concrete where the open tops are set.
Compactors.
And the compactors are set. But the rest, instead of doing the whole inside the fence area in concrete, it'll be heavy-duty asphalt.
I have a question about the funding source. Where's our money coming from for this?
for just the engineering is coming out of the solid waste fund. We did an amendment earlier for $194,000, and
That was passed last month, right?
the estimate on would be $286,000. Still, there's sufficient funds in that solid waste fund to pull it out.
And how long will the engineering work take to do?
I would say within the next 6 months, we'd be ready to bid all projects, and then we would just decide if we want to bid them one at a time or all at once.
And so where would the money come from for that? Would that have to be from our fund balance, or is that something we could borrow? How would we do that?
Your three choices would be fund balance out of the solid waste department, potentially using the rescue monies, and then third, borrow for it. But I wouldn't see why you would borrow for it if you've got the funds in the solid waste fund to do it.
Mr. Chairman, my thought, Robert, is number one, again, being on the solid waste subcommittee, I think it's unlikely that we're going to turn it all over to another party to design and build and then run. That's just my gut on it. And secondly, we've been struggling with these, the safety factor on these for so long. I think a 6 months duration of getting some design done. We may wait 6 months and fund it with the next budget, but I think we need to kind of continue the movement towards safing up these few here especially. And in 6 months, we'll have another better feel of our response to the request for proposals. There again, in 6 months, we may take those three options, or may have another option, or we may wait till the next budget year. But it's my thoughts.
I tend to agree, and I'm on the same committee with Commissioner Piercy and myself and Commissioner Dodd. It's kind of like the insurance committee. It's, somewhere you really don't want to be, but it's got to be done. That money, we kind of, same question you asked, I asked the other night, where's this coming from? And I'm not sure what the total fund balance that he's got in solid waste. 8 million?
9, between 8 and 9.
8 to 9 million.
Might hit 9 if not everything is spent. So between 8
the
and 9.
estimate I'm seeing here, what is 6245, and I assume that's with concrete?
That's with the alternative.
So we can expect if that bids come in, that should be lower than that, and the funds should be available for us without getting into our fund balance.
Well, I definitely think we need to move forward with it. The one at Weekly Lane is very dangerous when the cars back up on Saturday and Sunday and people are zigging and zagging through there, and it's something that's got to be done. So if it takes getting moving the other ones too to get the Smyrna one in motion, then I'll be very happy to make a motion that we move forward with this.
Well, I think the intent was we moved Weekly because it is the busiest convenience center in the entire county, to move it forward to because it's so the traffic is impeding commerce with all those businesses up and down Weekly. And then, of course, Walter Hill is in basically the same situation, a narrow 2-lane road with trucks and curves and hills and very dangerous.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Dodd. Further discussion?
I just got a question on the cost. You said just a moment ago about the alternates, concrete versus asphalt. So on your cost that you have in here, would you be pulling out, say on, let's see, this is Weekly Lane, would you be pulling out the $811,000 worth of concrete and substituting it for the $483,000 worth of asphalt? Okay, so it's not plus, it's instead of.
Correct.
Okay,
that's correct.
Okay, any further discussion, questions? Hearing none, let's call roll.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Okay, motion carries. Thank you, sir. All right, next up is a general fund budget transfer and amendments for salaries. Lisa?
Yes, this is mine. Every year, budget amendment or salaries. Every year at this time, we go through all the different line items to make sure that there's sufficient funds in the line items after we've gone this far. And this first amendment, bottom line, $61,775. There's funds within each function to cover those shortages. So that the first one is a transfer. The next one is a budget amendment for lines that we need to fill. And what happens with these, sometimes there's a retirement, so there's leave that we're paying out. That we've got several that's retiring at the end of June that wasn't contemplated, so that, and some have large balances that we have to pay out before June. Some of them are the person who has come in is paid more than the one that was left. Usually it's the other way around. The person coming in is paid less than the one that's going out. And then some is a budget error, like the very first one. We need $50 more to pay the mayor's salary because I wrote down the wrong number. $50. So it gets to a minimum salary, so we have to do that one. So anyway, this, out of all those departments, county mayor, risk management, general sessions, chancery court, public defender, disaster relief, we need $51,385 to cover these other shortages.
Did say that covered each of the departments we're looking at.
Right.
Okay, you've heard the request. This is something we do, basically clean up at the end of every year.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Stevens. Second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Okay, next is the discussion of the public safety buildings, and I'll call on Mayor Ketron there.
Yeah, we're now referring to that as the public health and safety buildings, putting in the word health. So, had a conversation with Comptroller Jason Mumpower on Friday. Spoke with him about looking for direction on how to spend the American Relief COVID coronavirus fiscal recovery funds for both this project of moving forward for the 6 public health and safety buildings. And he said to put it in letter form with our justification, which you'll see on your SharePoint, those bullet points of how we're justifying those that would, from the funds that we're going to receive. With Ms. Nolan's help, she and I prepared a letter on Monday. It was sent to Mr. Mumpower.
Early Monday morning. Yeah.
Early Monday morning. Reached out to him today. He was in the most of the day with the State Building Commission, and he sent me a text. He said he'd get back with me tomorrow. Did find out in my discussion with him on Friday that his department with the state of Tennessee will actually be the ones that audit this, as opposed to the U.S. Treasury sending out auditors to all 5,000 plus counties across the country and many cities who are receiving these tranches of money that's being issued by the U.S. Treasury. So, as with the other item we were asking for funding, what we're asking here tonight, and Chairman Reed is here, if you'd like for him to come up, we're asking to move this on to the full commission to hear that a week Thursday week to let them hear the request. I think the request would be moving it forward, and then I think we have an estimate of, Chairman Reed, 22 million? Is it 22 or 28? I think it was 27 some change. It was close to 27 for all 6, but Chairman Reed, if you'd like to ask him to come up.
This has been through public safety multiple times, and unanimous vote out of public safety every time it's came up. As far as I know, I stand to be corrected, Chairman Reed, but I don't think I'm off on that. Commissioner Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see on the SharePoint here, there's an email from a Melissa Kelton at CTAS, and point number 5 says, when planning for your projects, be encouraged that those funds should not stretch into the second payment in case the federal government pulls back on the second payment or restructures it for infrastructure. He calls this, don't count your chickens until they hatch. And number 6 says, work on developing a list of priorities in case more capital projects open up with the changes. Everyone wants to start making a difference in their counties, but try to hold off for 30 to 60 days to see how the interim final rule becomes the final rule. So if we vote to move forward with this and fund it with those COVID relief funds from the federal government, and they decide they're going to divert that money to an infrastructure bill or something else, but we plan to do this, what's the plan to pay for it then?
Well, we don't have the first money yet either.
So that causes even more concern. Isn't that supposed to be here by now?
Yes, but as I understand, some cities have received their first half, but, and speaking to Jerry Durham, I haven't found a county that's got their money yet, the county. I mean, it should be coming, but we haven't got it yet.
Mr. Chairman, and then what about the recommendation to wait 30 to 60 days? Does that not relate to what we're talking about here? Or am I reading that bullet 6 wrong?
Well, this was the recommendation.
They're recommending that we wait.
I believe what they're waiting on is final rule, because these things change. But, out of all of these, and I belong to Government Finance Officers Association. It is a national organization that they developed question and answers on what projects people ask what projects would they think, or asking, would this apply? And they responded back and cited things. This is in the interim final law where they thought it justified it. And one that surprised me, but then covers this, was in a specific question: can you use these funds for a EOC? Not health.
And their answer was yes.
And the answer was yes. So, we started out with, this was many emergency operation centers throughout the county. So, sure. And I think with the letter that we did and sent, I thought this was interesting. I think the mayor was ahead of the game. That they are developing a pre-audit website, for us local governments to ask these questions, and that to me is what we did. We didn't go put it on a website, but we sent it to them.
And in my text to property assessor this morning was that we'd like to have some kind of response from his office, and he said that he would before the next stated full commission meeting next Thursday on the 17th. So that's why we'd like to have the whole commission to at least take a look at this, forward it on as we did with the State Farm building, to send it on, forward it on without a positive or negative recommendation. And hopefully we'll have that information back from the comptroller's office on both.
And to me, this is laying out the priorities.
Right.
Lisa, a quick question for you here. The first amount that she's mentioning, how much is that supposed to be? First amount of money that we're supposed to get on these grants?
32 million.
32 million.
13.
32.
32, okay.
Getting 64.
Right. So I didn't know how it was divided up in the amount, so 32 million.
64 and some change.
Okay.
But it's supposedly in 2 tranches, half and half. I would like to know that we got it.
Mr. Chairman, can the motion be with a contingency specifically stated that if these funds aren't provided by this COVID relief, it's a whole nother topic?
Sure.
Yes, I think so. We can state it that way.
We still have till June 30th to get the grant.
Correct.
Though it's highly competitive. This, if you remember, we applied for a BRIC grant that for these same buildings that would be 75-25 coverage, and they said that we would know by June 30th on that grant. But in speaking with Carrie, it's highly competitive too.
6 months ago, whenever we applied for that BRIC grant, the intent is to move forward at least with 2 of these at Kittrell and Rockville. If we were fortunate enough to get the BRIC grant, then we would do all 6. And then this relief fund grant came out, and so I think every county was excited about that opportunity.
Mr. Piercy.
You made the comment that you would hear something, hopefully, from the comptrollers before the next commission meeting.
I asked him that today, yes, sir.
Moving this forward to the full commission for discussion and approval won't hurt anything. If we get to that point and the money's not there, we can discuss it at that time to turn it up or down. What's it going to hurt to move it out in front of the full commission for full disclosure and discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last week when we voted on the State Farm building, I wasn't necessarily opposed to doing that. I was opposed to sending it to the full commission without us coming up with a positive or negative recommendation, because I don't feel like we had the full picture of the costs and what we needed to do to this building and what's the plan moving forward. And do we know how much this is going to cost us for like staffing and utilities and insurance and all this on these new, do we have a full plan on how much this is going to add to our budget? It's more than just building a buildings, that we're going to have personnel in those and outfit those buildings with our equipment. And do we know what those costs are yet, or are we just only worried about the actual building right now?
Most of these are going for the volunteers. They already have the equipment. They already have the volunteers there. They're not new. It's not new facilities on the fire side. We're asking them to come in and help us run these facilities. The ambulances, you may have that covered because I think we've already purchased some through some other avenues. Is that right?
I'm not sure about the ambulance situation, Commissioner.
Well, that also would be in next year's budget, but I think we'll have those numbers before Thursday night. Commissioner Reed and Director Hudgens, I believe they're both still here.
If the question is, how are these stations going to be paid for, and I assume that's what you're talking about, I agree with Commissioner Piercy there. Our station is going to be manned by our volunteers. There's not going to be more costs there. They're basically going to move into that station. We'll be taking care of utilities. We're hoping that when we get the EMS people in there, and that's in their budget for this year, that of course we will be paying for them, but we need to expand it right now. We're 17 people short on the EMS side. So, just to man up these new stations, we're going to have to do hiring. And like I said, we're 17 behind right now, so, I mean, we're going to have to get them. Commissioner Allen and then back to Commissioner Stevens.
I think this was actually an idea that Commissioner Dodd had proposed at one of our previous meetings when we were talking about getting the $64 million. And I guess I feel like we've, had a little bit of a disjointed approach about how we're going to spend this money, because I would like to have seen us have a committee that's a broad cross-section of all the county representation of different departments, department heads. I don't know exactly what that makeup needs to be, but as I look at this list, number 2 on it says, if you're considering broadband, the state is considering a match program. This is early on, so you'll have to wait to see if it comes to fruition. Middle Tennessee Electric has made it known that for $50 million, they can outfit all of rural Rutherford County with fiber outside the municipalities, and they would do 10 of that. So that's 40. Well, then if you've got a match from the state, that could mean maybe for 20, we could do that. The next one I'm looking at is stormwater. I know from being on planning, we always have areas where there's stormwater issues, and there's neighborhoods that, in hindsight, something was engineered poorly or not like it should have been. And so, but we never really have any money available to go take care of those issues, or we'll wait on, FEMA grants sometimes and have to buy these houses back. And so I guess I'm just thinking, sure, it would be great to have these public safety buildings. It would be great to have the State Farm building, and it would be great to have, broadband. And I just don't know that we've sat down and really tried to strategize, exactly how we want to spend this money and what the best options and opportunities are. So that's really only been my reluctance. Not that I've not liked any of the ideas that have come forward, but it's just, there's so many unanswered questions, and each one of these things in making a purchase is just one piece to the puzzle. There's always moving parts. The devil's always in the details. And so I guess I just don't feel like I've had enough information as a whole to feel like I'm making a responsible decision.
I have to agree with Commissioner Allen. I'll go ahead, Commissioner Stevens.
I was going to say, likewise, I'm not necessarily opposed to these. I think they are a good idea, but this committee has an obligation. If we're going to send a recommendation to the full commission, we believe we need to do this, and here's how we propose to pay for it, instead of just sending something on and say, all right, we think we need it, and we're just going to figure it all out later as we go, and maybe we'll get money, maybe we won't. We might have to borrow. We might be able to use this grant money that might come. I just feel like we're dropping the ball on our responsibility if we send these big projects to the full commission without some kind of recommendation on how to pay for it, with something that we know is going to work to pay for it instead of the grant money that hasn't come in yet. So if the motion is just to send it to the full commission with no recommendation, I'm going to very politely vote no again, just because we need to figure out more information before we send it on.
What I was fixing to say when Commissioner Allen was speaking there, as far as what we're recommending to do, yes, you're right. We've got problems with stormwater in every one of our districts, especially in these rural areas. We need help. Yes, it'd be nice to have broadband across the board in this county. I feel like there are other ways we can go about getting that. That's another discussion. However, these public health buildings have something, this has been a long-term, we always asked our agencies to tell us long-term, what do you need? And these fire stations and these EMS stations are exactly what we've been looking for years. This goes back, we can pull data and show you, hey, this is what we want. We want stations in this area, here's why. We need stations over here, and here's why. So this is something we've had a lot of discussion, at least on those committees with. I've been on public safety most of my terms up here, except for about 8 years, where I got stuck in on another committee and couldn't get off for a while. But at any rate, that's why I know a little more about the public safety, and my heart's kind of there. But this is not a new discussion from public safety aspect for this county. Commissioner Dodd.
Lisa, y'all remind me, is there any money in the budget we've looked at these weeks to build 2 of these? Or is there any money in the budget to build these at all? So hitting the fund balance to the tune of $30+ million doesn't include any of this.
No. No.
So that again, it's a struggle to keep pushing I just get, it's very uncomfortable. Here's another 10 to 25 million. We don't know how we're going to pay for it.
I'm right there with you. That's why, this discussion has been put on hold till the end of June here, and we should have the answers on where this funding is coming from, because I'm just like y'all. I mean, I've got to see where these numbers are going to land and what we can afford. If we can't afford 6 stations, we're not going to go with 6 stations. We're going to go with what we can afford. That may be 0. I hope to God not, but, if that's the way it is, that's the way it is. But, the money doesn't grow on trees. We're getting some money here unexpected, and I think that we're trying to realize some of our long-term efforts, at least on the public safety side, to make that come true. Commissioner?
If it didn't come out of this committee tonight, would it go to September? If it went to the full commission?
We'll meet again at the end of June to set the tax rate. So, the full commission will meet again then. That's why I'm saying, we can go ahead and throw it out there, but we'll still have an opportunity to look at it on tax day. What is that, 28th this year?
28.
Is that right? Okay, so we will have an opportunity to look at it then, and hopefully by then we'll know about this BRIC grant, we'll know about these other grants, so we're kind of, we're up in the air on them, but I'm not advocating we go spend a lot of money we don't have. Commissioner?
I have a question with that BRIC grant. If we do get that, how long do we have to respond and tell them that we're going to accept it? Is that something that would have to be done like within 30 days?
Oh, a lot of, we just cannot turn around that quick on a lot of them, but we usually, when it gets like that, we tell them, respond back, because sometimes it's less 30 days. We just respond and say, we have to have this additional time to go through our committees, and then they'll say, okay. It's time to get it through our committee and get it through the commission.
And we know they're going to do that if we get it? Can we bank on that?
They've done it on every other one that we've come up. That's a lot of money to turn around and say you're going to do without having commission approval.
I guess my thing is if we get a notice in June that we're going to get the money, like if we get it the day after our commission meeting in June, where we set the tax rate, and they say you've got to respond within 30 days, and we don't have a commission meeting, what are we going to do
I would
then?
respond back to them and say, we need additional time to respond because of this and this and this. And if they say no go, if they're giving us the approval, I'm sure the mayor would call y'all in.
There's just so many unknowns with all of this. I think we need to slow this down just a little bit until we have a better picture of what is going on here, instead of just working off assumptions and hopes.
I have a question for Mr. Stevens. Don't take it wrong, it's just a good question. If you did not sit on this budget committee, would you not like to have the opportunity on the full commission to air your concerns there before we send a full recommendation in a positive direction?
Well, my understanding is that any commissioner can come to any meeting and be recognized and give their thoughts, and if it was something that was really important, I've been to other committees before during my time here. If I felt something was worthwhile of coming and sharing my opinion, I would go and ask to be recognized. So if I felt strongly about it, I certainly would come and ask to be recognized to give my 2 cents about it here.
Okay, we've had a pretty good discussion here, and basically we're asking to make a motion to forward this discussion to the full commission, either with or without approval. And is there any other discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Commissioner Piercy moves to move this forward to the full commission without a recommendation.
Without a recommendation for full commission discussion.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a second to forward this to the full commission. Any other discussion? Okay, call roll, please.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
No.
Commissioner Allen?
No.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Okay, motion barely carried there, but we will be sending this forward to the full commission. And indulge me for a minute, but I'm going to call for a short 5-minute break. Go ahead and call our Budget, Finance, and Investment Committee back into session and move on to our next item, which is the One-Stop Building State of Tennessee lease. Mayor, are you going to do this one? All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. You'll see the one-stop lease agreement with the state of Tennessee for the Department of Safety. This is, of course, you see the draft. You see on the monthly rental installments, it's a 7-year lease. The annual rental income is $74,754 at a rate of $6,229.50 monthly. At a rate of $18 per square foot. You will see at bottom of that page on item 9, improvements, the landlord will build out space pursuant to his Exhibit D. And basically the lease says that they will be responsible for paying their, look under item 8, utilities and services. It's a modified gross lease, so they pay their own utilities. While you talk to the architect, they'll have a separate electric meter, water meter, etc. that will be for their unit. They'll pay for all of their supplies. They'll pay for all of their, like I said, their utilities and their janitorial fees. And once this is accepted by the full commission, we'll put the signature on it, and then it will go to the next state building commission meeting, which will be the second week of July. Once that's executed, it will come back to us for signature, and they can proceed ahead.
Has this been through property management?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, excuse me. I'm reading that utilities are paid by landlord. I thought you said, did I hear you correctly?
No, look under item 8 on the first page. Utilities and services, this is the modified gross. The following utility services as applied are not included in the monthly rental installment. The tenant shall, at the tenant's cost and expense, be responsible for gas, utility, water, janitorial services, and supplies. You see that? Page 1.
It's in 23B.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Johnson, thought you were nodding at me there.
They're eagerly awaiting the arrival of this document. I can guarantee you that, because the Commissioner of Safety and his Deputy Commissioner, I talked to them less than 3 weeks ago, and they're just chomping at the bits to break ground.
Yeah, and then we have once this is approved by the State Building Commission, then there's also a time limit in order to have it completed. So I hope there's not a delay in getting plywood and whatever other things that are needed for the building of this building.
You need a motion to send this on the way?
Sir.
So moved.
I have a motion to approve the One-Stop Building State of Tennessee lease. Do I hear a second? Second, Commissioner Piercy. Any questions? Commissioner Stevens?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Did the amount of rent go down that we anticipated, or I thought it was going to be like $800,000 over the period of the lease, and it looked like it was $523,000.
No, sir, it's always been at $18 a square foot.
I think the square footage
they
went down,
reduced-
Robert. I think they were at 6,000.
They reduced their square footage.
Because the $18 a square foot is even more than I thought we talked about initially, so
They went from 6,000 because they chose to stay with the location to get your driver testing completed over on Middle Tennessee Boulevard. So this is strictly going to be one of their express centers, so they went from 6,000 to 4,000, but Mrs. Kroll, she increased hers from 4,000 to 6,000.
Do you know when we will have? Do you know when we will have a final copy of the lease? Or do you know when we will have a final copy of the lease? Since this is draft.
Once it's approved at the July meeting of the second week of July at the State Building Commission.
But you can't sign a draft copy.
I will have that. I'll get that tomorrow.
Okay.
Any further discussion?
That's good. That's a good catch. Thank you.
Hearing no other questions, call roll, please.
Commissioner Dodd?
yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Thank y'all. Next is a discussion of general obligation bond resolution for the Airport Authority funding.
We've already approved the initial resolution to borrow funds on behalf of the Airport Authority. This is the final resolution authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $6.3 million. There's a whole lot of other approvals too, but that's ultimately for us to be able to borrow money on behalf of them and then for them to issue a revenue bond to the county.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We've looked at this multiple times. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Okay, next is,
This is a resolution authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $34.4 million in aggregate principal bonds for the schools. These are for those projects that you approved earlier. We're just now going to go borrow the money.
Motion to approve.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. Are there any other discussions on this bond issuance? Hearing none, call roll.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Okay, next is the general fund budget transfer for the county mayor. Mayor, are you handling this?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you all know, the Crimson Security is the security agency that you all put into my budget. We ran short coming up on the end of the year by $3,000. That is for the security guard, armed security guard at the new parking facility for the judicial building, the 319 Maple Street for her, for those three elected offices there at 319. They work that parking lot. And also the Crimson Security officer that is now working across the street in probation. Yeah, they do walk around the health department as well. We've asked them to go over and start monitoring that parking lot as well. Some people are unauthorized and who live in the Nightingale apartment or whatever it is, they're been hanging out.
I've heard this discussion several times, but any questions for the mayor? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Call roll, please.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Okay. Now, we're going to discuss school facility tax collection policy. Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Steering looked at this the other night. We're switching from the development tax that we've known for all this time to the adequate facilities tax, which is the school-based tax, and that will start July 1 if the commission approves this change on the second reading next Thursday night, which we assume that that will happen. And we also have to have a policy on how these funds will be collected and who's going to do the permit issuing and so forth. So we had a good discussion about this at steering the other night, and this was unanimous as written, so I'll make a motion to approve tonight.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Second.
2 seconds. Commissioner Gooch. Are there any other questions about the policy itself? Have y'all actually drawn out a policy, Robert?
It's on the SharePoint.
It's on SharePoint. This is
Yeah, we went through all the highlights, and there were some good questions about it, and I think everybody was comfortable with that after all the questions were answered, so.
Taking care of the grandfathering in, people that have already applied.
Anybody who has a plat recorded before July 1st is under the old system, and if you wait and record your plat on July 1st or after, you're under the new system.
All right.
So it's that simple. It should be that simple. I'm sure there'll be some people looking for ways to get around it or game the system a little bit, but it's pretty black and white, I think.
Well, we've got a cutoff date there, so. Any other discussion?
I just want to make a note, and Lisa and I talked about this, because this relates to the resolution to approve the adequate facilities tax. This will show up under the steering committee section of the commission meeting, because I think state law reads, after levying the tax, the resolution should approve the policy. So this won't actually show up under budget, but we figured this needed to come to us because it related to funds. So.
And I believe this is our second reading. Is that correct?
This will be a separate resolution. There's be second reading, which is a separate resolution for the actual tax itself. But this is just a resolution for the policies.
Okay, any further questions? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Knowing of no further business or other business, we're adjourned.
Thank you, sir.